Hey, hi, morning, everybody, and thanks for joining me this morning. All right, so this is a mentor session, right? So it's not so much a teaching, a training, a lecture. So it's going to be very interactive, and it's going to be very much two ways. As a lot of what you're going to take away from today really comes from the questions you have. Right, let me just so there's a poll that I would like to do for us just to have a sense of where you guys are, so I'm able to kind of customize what I'm going to talk about. So I'm launching a poll in Zoom, right? Can I get you guys to just indicate so which describes you? Are you a pure student, or are you working and studying at the same time, or are you just a working adult who came and joined us this morning, right? So this will give me a sense of how I can tailor my presentation. So then try to make everybody happy. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. Good. Yeah. So I'm just going to give another 1-2 minutes to get most of us to put it in. Right. All right. Right. I'm seeing that majority are students. We do have people studying and working, as well people who are just working. Right. Okay. Good. So while you do that, let me pull up my slide. I have a few slides today just to make it easy for us to navigate this topic itself. Okay. Right. Okay. It's a pretty good mix actually. All right. So we have 40. So anyone else responding? Okay. Okay. And then after this, please get your phone ready, because I'm also have basically like a, you guys are familiar with Mentimeter, for you guys to put out your questions. So a lot of, as I mentioned, a lot of what I'm going to share, a lot of what I'm going to do today with you is really in terms of answering your questions. Now, so my name is Isaac. You know that. I'll introduce myself in a while's time. I will. So once again, I'm very clear in terms of, am I doing this as a trainer, coach, or mentor? So in the capacity of mentor, a lot of my sharings will be from my own experience in terms of best practices, as well as sharing some of the readings I've done before. But majority of my sharing will come from my own experiences. I'm working both in Malaysia and Singapore. So I heard just now Marisa talk about those ones with Singapore. So I was in Singapore for like 20 years. Yeah. So I can share with some of you guys on the do's and don'ts. Okay, all right. I think we have gotten everybody to respond. All right. Okay, so let me just share. So majority of us today here are students, and I think this is an interesting platform because when I speak to students, especially to the youth and even uni students in my church, I think sometimes that people want to just know what's going on, and then in terms of they have assumptions, and I will clarify some of the assumptions. I mean, you are not expected to agree with everything I say, but at least for something, food for thoughts, things that you can think about. For some of you there's about 12 of us who are both working and studying, this will be a very interesting conversation because I'm going to share with you practical stuff as well as you can reflect that against your academic content and see how it works, because I honestly believe theories and frameworks do work if you put it in the right context. And I'll share some of the frameworks that I use in my engagement with my clients. And for those of us who are working, obviously you have a lot more practical. I would say when I say practical questions, is probably situation that you're facing the office. So the more you ask, the more you're going to gain from this session. All right, I'm here to serve you guys today, and we want to do that. So thanks everyone for sharing this. Now let me just kind of start us off this morning. So let me just make sure I can. So you are seeing my slides, all right? So a bit about myself. So my name is Isaac. I am a trained engineer. My first 5 years was really spent in engineering. Graduating from UTM, I moved over to Singapore. I was working with Panasonic Singapore. Moved up from production engineer to R&D engineer. Subsequently, I moved out and I served my church in Singapore starting a charity organization. So when I started charity organization, it's very interesting. I start to understand human behavior and people behavior. And that is something I find a lot of the failures in change. It is really the not understanding people itself, right? So that kind of shaped the way I understand people and bring about organizational change. Now, in terms, so I'm still a Singapore PR, so that's why I'm living in Johor. I do run a business both in Malaysia and Singapore. Now, so the stories I'm going to share with you today both includes those that I've done in Singapore as well as those I've done in Malaysia. And I also share how do you contextualize and use it in the different scenarios, right? In terms of change management, I am a certified culture change consultant. So I do help organizations with cultural transformation projects and work with them, right? Now, I'm still very much an engineer at heart. So even my presentation, it's a structured approach, as well as I'm going to share with you, I'm a bit more technical in my presentation. So please feel free to ask questions. And if there's anything that what I share does not make sense, please do ask follow-up questions, right? At the end of the day, this is a learning session. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all my lists, so just a bit more my organization. So I run a company called People Performance. And, for us, it's really about being a trusted learning partner. So you think about it, trust is probably, would you agree with me, indicate in the chat box, right? Trust is probably the most important thing in as a human being, right? Whether at work or at home, trust is the most important. Do you agree or disagree with that? Right? Indicate in the chat box. Because fundamentally, everything we do, whether in learning, whether at work, really leads up to trust. Whether you talk about integrity, whether you talk about frustration, whether you talk about happiness, whether you talk about relationship, everything leads to trust. So the fundamental of my organization is really to be a trusted learning partner. So, there are a lot of things that we do, which is not conventional consulting, but it helps us in the way we partner our clients. Now, some areas that I work with clients and how this will come and support some of sharing in terms of change management, especially when we talk about implementing change and managing change. So we do a lot of workshops. So I work with leaders a lot in terms of not just change, but leadership, right? So we do a whole bunch of workshops. Then we also help some SMEs in terms of getting them to outsource to us their training function, because a learning function, if you notice some of the recent articles, whether it's in Forbes or Harvard Business Review, there are a lot of conversation around learning being a central or being an enabler of change in organization. So we actually help organization manage change. And finally, we do transformation work. So this is where we call organizational-wide transformation work in terms of how do we change our processes, how do we develop the people, as well as how do we increase productivity. So I've involved all of this. So a lot of my sharing will be kind of all over depending on the questions you ask me, right? Now, clients I work with, both Malaysia, Singapore, globally, MNCs as well as SMEs. And I will tell you, there are probably three kinds of organizations, right? You have the SME, the small medium enterprises. You have the SME that behaves like, you have an MNC, multinational corporation that behaves like multinational corporation. And you also have multinational corporation with a very strong SME thinking, right? So depending on where you are, I'll be able to share some of those more details. Now, today's sharing is really around what I call myself pracademic, practical solutions, as well as some academic content, because I do use both of it in my engagement. So let's start with this. Bring out your phone. If you have your phone with you, can you scan this QR code? What's going to happen is you're going to go to a Mentimeter, and I want you to key in your questions there, right? So scan the QR code, and any question, what questions do you have concerning organizational change, or what would you like to know more regarding organizational managing change? just key there, and we just go there and I'll visit there, right? And okay, now let me just do something here. Let me see if I can get. Okay, let me just get you guys to key in your answers there. All right, I'm also just putting the link in the box in case some of you don't have a phone. All right. And what I'm gonna do, so are you guys at the Mentimeter link? So let me bring this link up for us. Okay, so yeah, okay, so first starting to put the questions. Now, what I like to do is really put your questions. And as we walk through this morning's sharing, right, it's really about addressing your questions, right? We only have a few minutes. We only have like probably another 15 minutes, 40 minutes. So let's make it count, people. Right. So I'm also letting you see in terms of the question being asking, right? So I asked about change, leadership focus, great. So that's definitely thing I'm going to talk a bit more, how to get different stakeholders buy-in. Can you show more about what means organizational change? All right, sure. How do you advise if I can get management buy-in to be aware the need of organizational change? Okay, good. Good. Any more questions? Any more questions? Okay. Right. So let's look at the question that you guys have. Shock culture. Whoever indicates shock culture, could you explain a bit more so you can actually put another post? Help me understand, or you can come out to the mic and share with me what do you mean by shock culture? You shock people or people shock you, right? So what's shock culture? I'll be interested to know a bit more on that. Okay, how to address stakeholders' fear when change is mentioned. All right, great. So yeah, it really talks about the human-centered approach, character attitude of supervisors, character of attitude of supervisors to their subordinate. Now, this I'm going to talk in terms of from a change perspective, right? So as you guys are keying in your questions, yesterday I was running a workshop with a client on performance management, and one of the things we recognize that when we talk about supervisors, they are part of leadership. So how do we get them to toe the organizational line, so to speak? All right. Any other questions? So far, I only have 8 questions. Right. All right. Right. So whoever indicated shock culture, if you can help me elaborate a bit more, that would be helpful for me to give you a proper response. Yeah. How to overcome self-doubt. I know that I should champion the organizational change at HR. However, I always doubt whether I'm doing the right thing. Okay, so I'm going to share some things that will make sense today, but at the same time, please reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I can always give some more content in terms of how to go about it, right? A critical importance of driving change is confidence, right? I do tell people sometimes being confident is more important than being right. Right, being confident is more important than being right, and that's just a very practical way of going about it. If you think about it, why scammers get away with things is because they sound very confident. Okay. How has the pandemic influenced organizational change? Great. So we're going to talk a bit about technology, as well as, what's interesting, the human needs have not changed. Human needs are similar. What has changed is the mode in fulfilling those needs, right? Let me repeat, the human needs have never changed. It has always been the same. What has changed is the mode of fulfilling those needs, right? And we're going to talk about some of it from a change perspective. Okay, hybrid flexibility working arrangement. All right, great. So once again, when we talk about that, it comes down a little bit to leadership, right? Responding to changes in employees' performance. Okay, so this one probably I'm going to come from the angle of how do you measure performance during a change, organizational change. Okay. Right. So let me just very quickly look at these questions. Why is change important? All right. How much has the industry changed? How much has the industry changed in recent time? And if so, why do you think it's crucial for others to apply these changes? All right. And this really talks about organizational survival. Okay, so I'm going to start with this first. All right. Why is change important? And it's a similar question with how much has the industry changed? Now, how much has industry changed? It's every industry changed differently, but if you notice, the biggest change in industry is those tech related, right? Now, there are two modes in change. Either you are the change champion, I mean you start change, or you change because you have to change because everybody has done it, right? Where I'm coming from, working with leaders, working with different clients, I can tell you if you wait to change only when everybody has done it, you will probably lose the most, because you in a way you get the scraps of the customers because everybody has gone forward. Now the challenge with being the first person to change is you are the R&D, because everybody is looking whether you're doing it right or wrong. So let me share with you. So when I was in Panasonic, it was very interesting. We had this conversation between Panasonic and Sony. And Sony back then, this was like in the early 2000s, was still seen as a technological driver. Basically, when we talk about audio video, they are still seen as the market leader. So Sony invested a lot in terms of becoming what we call a market leader. So they want to be first to customer. Now, Panasonic had a very different thing. For them is they are a market follower, which means they will see what new products is out there. They will see which one sells well, and then they will start building products. And so in Panasonic, we pride on two things, competitive pricing and reliability. So we would see how Sony does. If Sony does something and it works well, then we'll start building. And you know what? This is where re-engineering comes in and all. So industry change. So this is where you need to ask, where are you at? If you don't change, you will end up being changed, forced to change, or you will just close shop, right? And I would say in today's context, all industry have changed. I would say all industry have changed. Recently, I met an entrepreneur who even has brought his father's hardware business, those selling toilet accessories and all, has even brought them online. So you realize everybody has to go online in that sense, right? So that's interesting to the question. As to the question why change is important, anybody wants to give a guess why change is important? You can always key in the chat box your response. Why is change important? Anyone? Okay. If I would say the short answer to why change is important is really from a business perspective is survival, right? The key word why change is relevant, right? Relevance. So the reason change is critical is about being relevant to the market, right? What do I mean by that? If you look at, once again, you notice during the pandemic, a lot of those kedai makan, they started going online, they started partnering Grab, a lot of the online one. Why? Because, and these are the people who never needed to do this, right? Because it's about staying relevant. So change is critical to be relevant to the market. Remember, business exists for the customers, right? Business exists for the customers. If the customers don't buy, the business don't exist. So for that very simple reason, change in organization is always driven by customers and the industry itself, right? Why is change important? For those of you in university, you're doing your masters, there's this thing called PESTEL. It is what we call external environment scan. So Ramat said change allows us to move forward in life. New, exciting. When you don't actively work on evolving yourself, you become stagnant. Great. So once again, it's about relevance, right? Learning new skills or working on your inner self can bring about change. Never knew were possible. Great. So I think that's a very good point, right? It is about being relevant. So Ramat shared from two contexts. organizational and individual context. The key word, and this is what drives me every day waking up, is being relevant. Now, a person may be relevant 10 years ago, but they may not be relevant today. So that's why you do hear leaders talking, or even consultants talking, in my days, in those days, things should have been done that way. You know, that is called living in the past. Relevance is doing what works today, right? So for example, adopting of tech approaches. So for example, my company, we have just recently launched a micro-learning solution because we know that clients are looking for short learnings rather than long learnings, right? So we have moved away from LinkedIn learning to micro-learning, because micro-learning allows business to change very fast. So change is about survival because you need to be relevant. So, and why do you, and you know, it's interesting, when I was doing my MBA in 2012, and I was doing it in Singapore, and we were told my MBA has a 5-year shelf life. Right? I'm not sure where you guys are at, but it was interesting that in my class, the lecturer literally said my MBA has a 5 years shelf life, which means after 5 years, you know, it may not be relevant anymore. Either the content has changed, or the content have changed, or you know, the application have changed, right? So that's why change is relevant. All right. What else can I look at here? How has the pandemic influenced organizational change? Two. Actually three. First is consumers' expectation has changed, right? Secondly is employees' expectation have changed. And third is the organizational investment. So you notice some offices have downsized because they don't need such a big office, right? And a lot of the pandemic influence is really on the human behavior. Now, what is interesting about the pandemic, and this is where we talk about human behavior, is that you know, this whole idea of remote working from home has been in the market since the 90s, right? When I was working in Singapore, even at 2009, 2011, I was already doing remote working, right? But it's just that because a lot of companies not used to it, they say cannot, remote working doesn't work for us. But the pandemic put a hard stop and forced people to change. So what can we learn about change? Change is possible if we are willing to commit to it. So it's not about whether can we change or not. So the question should be, how can we make change work, right? So the way we ask questions, and this is where in coaching, in consulting, we focus a lot in terms of the questions we ask clients. So it's not about can change work. It is about how to make change work. So those are the things we talk about, right? Okay. All right. So as I go through presentation, I will address some of these other points, right? When you talk about characters, we talk about self-doubt. Hopefully this morning presentation will give you a bit more confidence in how we do it. What's the most important element when working? Okay. I'm addressing some of these questions first because it's not my slide and I'm scared I forget. What is the most important element when working in an organization? You need to understand what the organization wants. Okay, that is my opinion. You must know what the organization wants. That's important. Secondly, you need to understand the organization culture. All right, you need to understand the organization culture. Some organization culture, fun is part of it. Some organization culture, fun is not part of it, right? And you need to recognize that in some organizational culture, you can go and talk to the CEO direct. In some organization, they are not happy if you directly talk to the CEO. So I would say, if you are joining an organization, you really need to understand the organization culture. When I say organizational culture, I don't mean their core values. I mean, observe how people behave. So let me give you an example. Let's say you got a job, right? And when you went to the company, you notice they have a pool table, they have a Switch on PS5, right? They have those things, but you do not see people playing it, right? What does that tell you? Right? So you see them having a pool table, you see them having PS5, you see them having bean bags and everything. So it looks very fun, right? But you don't see anybody using it, right? Now, this is what we talk about culture. The company may say, no, we are a fun organization, we have a lot of fun. But if you don't see people using it, then it obviously tells you it's not as fun as it's being promoted, right? And this is what we talk about real culture. So culture is seen from a behavior perspective, right? So do get to understand that first, right? So the way I do a quick assessment of culture, the way I do a quick assessment of culture is I always ask people, how would you describe your company, right? So I'll talk to the staff, I'll say, how do you describe this company? My suggestion, if you're going for interviews, always don't just let the interviewer talk to you on the way out. Ask the interviewer, do you mind if you talk to some of the staff? Get to hear what they tell you. If the interviewer is afraid of letting you talk to the staff, that itself is a red flag, right? That they may not be as democratic as you think. So talk to people, right? Tisha talks for illustration purposes. I think you are talking a lot more in terms of the core value statements and the vision statements, right, Tisha? Okay, so once again, that's the most important, the organizational culture. So I have had the opportunity to work in a few types of organizational culture. I was in the Japanese culture. So in Japanese culture, it's very top down, it's very hierarchical. No conflicts, everything done discussion, anything. The bosses talks on the back end. People don't give you direct feedback. People always go to your boss and give you feedback. So that's more Japanese. Then I moved to a Singapore company, a local SME startup, and it was a very hard culture where it's all about drive. In fact, I remember my boss told me. In fact, he told me this. He says, Isaac, how much salary do you want? So I was shocked. His rule of thumb is this: whatever you want, you just need to make 10 times more. So that was thing that I remember. How much you want, you just need to make 10 times more for the organization. So that was a very result-driven culture, right? And I remember for that company I was working, the boss and majority are singles, so they are not married. And I was married at that time. And when we talk about culture in that company, it was a very singles culture. So people will hang out after work, weekends they'll hang out together, they will do activities. So, and then they will stay back at night, and then sometimes they have drinking sessions. So it was a very singles culture, and I couldn't really blend in because I was married and I was a baby coming out. So so that are things you need to look out for. Okay, so that's from a culture perspective. Let me see. Okay, character supervisor, digital transformation. So as I walk through the change process, you will see the digital. I will explain a bit more how the digital transformation is incorporated to that, right? How to get different stakeholder buy-in. So I take it who are the people asking these questions. You are in a way driving change. So I will share a bit on that. I don't really have specific slides on it, but I'll share along the way. All right. How to get advice, get buy-in. Okay, we have a few buy-ins, address stakeholders, fear. Now, fear is real. I will share with you afterwards. Responding to change in employees' performance. Okay, good. So let me close this slide. Let me go to my deck slide, and then we will look at some return point. Now, so far, what I've shared, does it make sense to those who have asked the questions, right? From what I've shared, does it address your point? Just indicate yes or no in the chat box, right? Because I just want to make sure that you walk away having clarity of what's going on. All right, great. All right, cool. Okay, so let's come back to this now. Basically, I'm going to simplify a bit on change. So then after that, we can go back and forth on questions, right? So when you talk about organizational change, we talk about not just about changing from printing paper to doing soft copy, right? We are not talking about that. When we talk about organizational change, we talk about entire organizational change, which could include restructuring. That means you change of departments, you change of the way people work, you change of the organization process, you change of organization policy. So these are major changes, right? So for example, if you look at how even at how our government work, right? Different government takes over, they have different way of working. So those are massive change. Now, in this kind of massive change, The three things that you need to look out for is the people aspect of it, the process aspect. So people aspect is the people factor, right? The people factor, the motivational level, the fear level, the resistance to change, those are the people factor. Then when we talk about the process factor, so process factor focuses on how do you drive change, is there a plan, or do we just wake up one morning and say, let's change, right? As well as for people to change, you need to help them change. So what kind of process you put into place, right? And when we talk about process, we also talk about what are some of the policies the organization has to put in place. So for example, if you talk about digitalization, right? So one of the policy would probably be in terms of we want to digitalize everything. Now, part of that process will also need to indicate when do you need to start phasing off some of the paper document, and so that you can do on soft copy. So those are the process part. And the last part is the leadership part. And this leadership part really is about driving the direction, right? So these are the three areas you want to look at when you talk about change. Now, let's look at the first one, the people factor. Now, so this is a very interesting comic strip. I use this in my change management workshops. So, everybody wants change, right? Let me ask you, how many of you like change? Indicate in the chat box. Like or dislike? How many of you like change? Like or... So you can indicate like or dislike, right? How many of you like change? Yeah. Come indicate in the chat box, do you like change or do you... It all depends. Ellie, depends on what? All right. Okay, I like that answer though. We all like better change, okay? All right, we all like better change. All right, good. What about the rest? Do you like change or do you like change or dislike? Rasika, depends on what? So for those of us who say it depends, right? Could you share depends on what, right? Sometimes if I'm comfortable, then no. Thank you. I think that's a very sincere and honest answer, right? So this is something is interesting. I was in a conference in December, and I was the last speaker in the conference. And I think about 2 or 3 speakers before that talk about, people don't like change, right? And when they say, do you all agree people don't like change? Everybody agreed to it. Then after that, when I asked them, I asked the question, if the change benefits you, do you want change? And everybody raised up their hand. Now, what does this tell us about change and organizational change? Now, people, change is expensive. Change can be expensive, but it's not always expensive, right? As well as, change can be expensive, but it's not all the time. That's one. Secondly, you definitely need to spend money if you're going to do change. All right, I will share a little bit more. Where do you spend the money on? But this is the message. Everybody wants change if it benefits them. Now, if you look, I think at Harvard Business Review, a couple of years back, they had an article that says 70% of organizational change program fails. Now, and indeed, one of the things they thought that the reason organizational change fail, one of the element is people don't understand why the organization needs to change. Now, what does that mean? It means that companies, when they launch a change program, they did not take the time to communicate to the staff how the staff will benefit, right? They didn't communicate. They only communicate from a logical perspective. Remember, human beings, we are more emotional than logical, right? We are all more emotional than logical. So we will love change if we benefit from it. We will hate change if we don't benefit from it. Because why? It's extra work, right? So quite interesting with this comic strip. So the fellow said, who wants change? And everybody hands up. And then after that, he says, who wants to change? And people, like, okay. And I thought this was an interesting comic strip because the last part when he asked, who wants to lead change? And one of 2 of you just now mentioned that you are process, nobody wants to, right? Because everybody loves the benefit. Who wants to change? The people don't respond because they feel, oh, you mean I have to make a change. And then the last one, who wants to lead change, because it's not easy. And sometimes when you lead change, you are seen as the bad person, right? So these are what we call the realities that happens in organizational change. All right, very quickly, let's talk about the people factor of it. Now, if you're going to talk about organizational change, if you want people to change, there are a few things that needs to happen. First, people must see that the change benefit them. Now, what does this mean? So if they come, now let's not assume that people's salary increase. Firstly, there's no guarantee of salary increase, right? That's one. Secondly, there's no guarantee of the job being permanent. But people must see the benefit of the change, right? They must see the benefit. They must feel that the change will affect them. So that's one thing they need to know. Next thing, you're going to get people to change. People need clear guidance, reassurance, and support. So once again, don't just say, oh, because I think change is good, everybody must want change. That's not true. From neuroscience, they've always told us that our brain has this fight or flight. So if we think change is bad, we will fight, we will resist. If we think change is good, we will support. And the last one, people want to know if they are on the right track. That means if they are changing, they want to know, are they changing correctly or are they doing things wrongly? So these are what people want to know. Now, so let me share with you the, what we call it, the academic part. So this particular stages of change, there's this model that I use when I work with leaders. It's called the Transcritical Model of Change. This was by Francesca and Clementi in the 70s when they wanted to find out the behavior change of human beings, right? So they wanted to know why some people change and then go back to their old ways, why some people change and the change is permanent. And what Francesca and Clementi noticed when they were doing this experiment about people quitting smoking. So this focus on behavior change, right? So we are focusing on the people factor. So this thing, pre-contemplation. So one of the things that these two professors realized is, in the first place, do people even know that they have problems? If they don't have problem, then change is an option, right? Like somebody change, if I'm comfortable, then no need to change. So one of the things for people to recognize is people will change if they see there is a problem. The second stage they describe, we should call contemplation. So if I were to put it in simple English, pre-contemplation is, do I know I have a problem, right? Contemplation means, now that I know I have a problem, do I want to improve it, right? So this is the second part. And I think this is fundamental, because just because a person knows they have a problem does not mean they want to fix it, right? So once again, if everybody wants to fix their problem, then we have a lot more less problem in life. So we need to recognize this. Just because people know they have a problem doesn't mean they want to fix it. For example, if a person knows that they are on the obese side, right? Are you saying that they don't realize that that is a problem? They do know it's a problem, but it's just whether they want to change or not. That is a choice, right? So that's contemplation. So one of the things in organizational change is people need to recognize that the current state of the organization has a problem, or the current working condition has a problem. If there's no problem, why change, right? You share my thing today, all right? Okay. All right. Okay, so that's the pre-contemplation. Now, so that's why it's important when you want somebody to change, and at the personal application level, if you want people to change, you need to help them realize. They must realize, not you telling them. They must realize that they have a problem. They must come to the conclusion that they want to change, and based on their Prochaska and Clementi's findings, they will always say, it is most people will want to change something that's immediate. Immediate is defined as 6 months, right? So if something that they want to fix within 6 months, that becomes a priority compared to something that they want to fix a year from now. So my example would be, when I first started my business in 2012, I was traveling a lot, so my eating habit was bad. So I was gaining a lot of weight. And people tell me, and I also know I was gaining weight and it was not healthy. But at that time, my priority was financial stability of the business. So because of that, I was very clear: financial stability of the business first, health comes second. Let's not go into the argument of which is which, but that was my priority. So I actually did that until a point, and then I think it was 2018 when business was more stable. no, 2019, business was more stable. I actually then weight loss became a priority. So when that happened, it was so easy for me to go on a diet to be able to so easy for me to go on a diet to be able to start losing the weight. So why that happened without anybody forcing me? Because I came to the second stage where I said I want to fix the issue, right? So this is true for all human beings, right? And it's applicable in change management, where as leadership, you must know this is what's happening to people, right? Are we okay with this? Any question on behavioral change or people part of it? All right. Okay. Now let's look at leadership. So at an organization, and if you are an organization leader, you must provide clear direction. Now, there's a lot of conversation about, people need to be democratic. We need to get people to think about it. We need to get people to take ownership. Now, those are true only after the leaders set the direction. So when I talk about leadership here, I'm talking about the senior level leaders, the business owners, the CEOs and all. They must provide direction in terms of where are we going? Are we going to do digitalization? Are we going to focus on the customer? Are we going to focus on cost saving? So they must provide the direction. Now, once they provide the direction, and then you engage the entire organization to build it up on it, right? So that's how, that is the way we leadership has to work. Okay, the change manager can help prepare the statement or program about change, but the message comes from the executive. The change manager can help prepare the statement or program about change, but the message comes out from the executive. All right, so when you say executive here, Rama, I believe you mean executive here, meaning as the CEO, right? Yeah, so once again, this is one of the biggest challenges in organization is most people think HR drives change. No, actually, it's leadership drives change. HR is implementer, HR is the one, the enabler, right? And therefore, what you say is true. The senior leaders are the one that drives. Now, sometimes the challenge is how do we partner the senior leaders, right? I will come to that a bit more. Now, next thing is communication. Now, communication is critical. So when we do change, when I work with companies and doing change, it's very important to have continuous change. So, town hall meeting is critical. If you're in the workplace, having regular updates on the progress of change, right? Regular updates on all different activity of change is critical. So that needs to happen. You cannot assume people know what's going on, right? Remember, in organizational change, organizational leader, meaning the C-suites, usually have a greater interest than the employees, right? In most situations. And then the next one, alignment now. Okay, so this alignment focuses on the C-suites, the head of department, the managers, the supervisors. So everybody has to be aligned. One of the biggest challenge in organizational change is the C-suites, the CEOs, and they are for change. And then maybe you have a few HODs which don't like the change, because you know why? They already spent so much money and so much time and effort. So they don't like the change. So when the CEO says we need to change, the HOD say, you know what? It's just another one or two. So there isn't a alignment where the HOD supports what the CEO says. Now, when there is no alignment, then that's where change starts to break down, because every HOD becomes their own leader, and people will follow their immediate leader. So from an organization perspective, there must be alignment, right? And then the next one is provide the resources. So when I say resources, it's not just money, it's time, it's time, and also in terms of manpower. So those things needs to be done. So leadership has to do this, but leadership can only do this if there is proper feedback. So later when I show you about what we call the change process, it will make sense how we work on all this, right? So those from leadership perspective. Now, one thing that one thing you need to recognize is this thing called culture, right? I'm showing this on the what we call PowerPoint. Okay, are you all familiar if this thing called holistic cultural dimension? If not, please go and check it out. So what was interesting is whether it's the people part or the leadership part, both are humans and both are influenced by culture. Now, what I'm showing you here is the Malaysian culture, right? So if you go to Hofstede's, you will realize that Malaysian culture is very hierarchical, very top-down, and this is not just applicable at the leadership level; it also applies at the human level. So very simply, if you look at the Malaysian culture, especially SMEs, is very, very top-down, right? That's one. Secondly, you look at individualism. Malaysians, by nature, we are very collectivist. So herd mentality is part of our culture, which is why if you are in the workplace, one thing you notice happen in a meeting when somebody asks for ideas, nobody raise up their hands. But later on during lunch or tea break, the person will be talking about all the ideas that the management should do. And the reason why is they didn't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable, right? So this is part of it. So culture affects. Now, if you are in an MNC, then if it's an American MNC, then perhaps the work culture is a bit more American, where you must be visible. You need to show that you have done work, right? If you are more of a Malaysian culture, then it's more collectivist. You cannot say, "Oh, I did it." You must say things like, "No, my team, we work hard for it." So a lot of these things sound like wordplay, but it's very linked to culture. Right? I don't have time to go in detail, but I would really encourage you to do this. And if you write to me, I will share you a video link, a YouTube video which I did on this culture part of it. So culture is something I impress a lot when I work with organizational leaders to recognize, right? And this applies both to the leaders and to the people. Now, let me come to the last part of this morning's presentation, as really when we talk about change, there must be a process. Then what we call, there is a method to the madness, right? And so if you look at this is probably one of the most comprehensive change model. It's called Kotter's 8-step change, right? Let me just indicate that. Kotter's 8-step change is perhaps one of the most comprehensive change model because it considers both the organizational need and the people need, right? The organizational need and the people need. There are other change models which in my opinion, does not address everything. It focuses more on either the people side or it focuses more on the organizational side. But Kotter really brings both together. Now, in any change program, it must be driven by the team, right? So the approach should be clearly communicated, which means people need to know what's the change process. So let me share with you. In Singapore, I was in the consulting, and we did a total transformation program for the inland revenue, which is equivalent to our lembaga hasil dalam negeri, LHDN. So over there, the transformation was to be more customer-centric. So we literally work on an entire change program where we work with the senior leaders, we work with the managers, we do interviews with the taxpayers, right? And then we come up with a plan, and then it's being communicated, not just via email, but we have dashboards. We work with the managers to address some of their people's concern. So it's a very complete program. So you must communicate this, not just communicated clearly, but communicated regularly. So one of the things we do with organization is you must make sure there's a communication board where everybody has access. In today's context, it can be your Microsoft SharePoint, or some form of bulletin board online so people can see what's the progress of it. That's one. Secondly, engagement is key. Remember I shared, when we talk about organizational change, the leaders must set the direction. Then after that, engage the people on how to do it, right? And the third one, and this is critical, and having worked with HR people, sometimes they struggle with this part about progress should be measured. Because, and I hope I don't offend anybody, but sometimes HR people are very, very about the people. They don't look at the analytics in terms of measurement, right? I think my benefit is coming from a technical engineering background. We try to measure everything, good and bad. So progress should be measured, which means when you do an activity, you must measure, is the activity well received, the activity not well received, are people open to change? So you must measure. So if it's a training workshop, are people happy with it? Are their takeaways there? If you are doing a town hall, do people find it beneficial? So how many people attended, right? And then you do surveys. So a lot of surveys is required. Now, very quickly, if you look at change management, in these quarters, basically there are 3 stages. You look at it, right? The first is create climate for change. So remember I talked about people need to know why they need to change. So if you look at quarters, The first 3 steps focuses on creating a climate for change. So it's increased urgency, meaning what will happen to our company if we don't change, right? And I was talking to a client, so the HR person, I said, how do I get my company to change? Then first thing I asked him, how was your revenue over the last 3 years? Then he said, the revenue is good. Then I said, why do you want to change? He said, because I feel we are still doing things the old way. I said, okay, good. But for the organization, as long as your revenue is doing well, the profits are doing well, the margins are doing well, most people don't want to change because they don't see, because they are not suffering. So I actually had to talk to him about talking about market trends, about doing a bit more forecasting and finding problems in the organization. So the way we talk about change is you must find a problem to fix and then drive change through the problem, right? So that's where we talk about increased change. Now, building the guiding team. Remember I talked about leadership alignment? So usually what we need to do is we will basically get the HODs, cross-functional leadership team, form what we call a change project team, right? So for example, if you look like in government or not, in organization, we have this thing called Project Management Office, PMO, right? Not Prime Minister's Office, Project Management Office. So this is the guiding team that will drive change for the entire organization. One of the reasons we do this is to get alignment across all the leaders, right? It's very important. Now get the right vision. So this is about the direction of the organization. And this is where the CEO and the senior leadership must be clear where the organization is going. So that's the creating climate for change. So when we say climate, it means people need to feel it. Let me repeat that. If it's climate, people need to feel it. It's not just talk, but people need to feel it. I mean, is there a sense of urgency, right? Are people, are the way we are doing things, is there, we want change or are we still business as usual? So that's the first part. Now, let's say that gets it right. The next part of the process is called enable and engaging and enabling the entire organization. So communicate for buy-in. So you want to do surveys, you want to do town hall meetings, you want to have small activities where you get your employees to take ownership. So who wants to do a dinner and dance or an appreciation night, or who wants to be in the committee to run this particular activity? So get people to do, get people to get involved in the change process. Don't just do it from the top. Now, in the past, usually you hire a management consulting company to come up with a plan, but you must get your people involved. So communicate for buy-in and empower action is really, really important if you want to succeed. Empower action means you let people do things. So how I work with clients is we will identify the key activities, then we will work with HR to get them to either get the departments to take ownership of the B1 or they have competition, right? So for example, who come up with the latest, maybe they have a company shirt or company logo or a events logo or program logo. So we get them to do the designing. So when we do that, we actually get buy-in because people get interested, people get excited, right? We do that. Now, number 6 is called create short-term wins. So usually organizational change is as short as maybe 18 months to as long as 36 months, right? Which is like 1.5 years to 3 years, 1.5 years to 2 years long. Now, you cannot wait till the end to basically say we have succeeded. So create short-term win is you must have small events to show that you have succeeded. So for example, if you want to make a total change, then you want to say, okay, by first quarter, we must hit this target. By second quarter, you need to hit this target. So whenever you hit the target, people feel that, hey, you know what? We are in the right direction. So that is very important because when you know you're in the right direction, confidence goes up, buy-in goes higher, and people will say, yes, I think this is working. Now, people want to know that. The thing that people hate is when they don't know whether they are doing is contributing or not contributing or whether in the right journey. Now, what say if the organization's action plan didn't work? Then organization needs to communicate that, hey, you know what, this didn't work. We are going to try this. And you must create short-term wins that is winnable, right? It has to be something that is winnable so people have confidence. And the last part of it, which is to implement and sustain change, which means performance management, rewards, right? Rewards and incentive. There's a client of working, they were implementing SAP. So SAP is a system in the organization, and the SAP team actually had a special bonus for running that change. So you must do that you must measure the performance, right? Must measure the performance in terms of how things get done. So this is a very, I would say it's a very comprehensive model to do change. Okay, so I've given you guys the main building blocks in terms of the people part, the organizational part, as well as the leadership part, right? Now it's over to you. What questions do you have? Indicate in the chat box if you have any other questions, or if this is clear enough, please indicate it so that I'm able to quickly respond if there's any other questions on this. As well as I hope this has been helpful for you guys. Yeah. Questions? You can ask on the mic or you can key in the chat box. All right, anybody has questions? Oh yes, stakeholder buy-in. So let me just look at the question you guys asked just now. Stakeholder buy-in. Now you have to recognize. There's this thing called stakeholder management matrix. It talks about power versus interest. Right now, this is a very good tool to identify who you should make happy in the change and who you know they're not happy, but you just need to accept that they're not going to be happy, right? And based on those matrix, those who you need to make happy, you need to spend more time with them, right? So when you're doing change, you realize some people will be difficult, but you know what? You still need to love them because you need them to sign off on whatever request you're making. So that's part of stakeholder. So stakeholder management matrix, the power versus interest, is a really good tool to identify it. Once again, drop me your contacts and I will send you some of the videos I have on this. Ahmad, replay which one? Yeah. Okay. Okay, so in terms of content, I've shared as much as possible. I hope the examples I've given you is specific enough, right? Stakeholder management. So I was running this transformation project in 2018. And so this is a real story, right? So it was transformation project, and then we were doing, and then there's this particular head of department that was resistant. And you know what? We were just pushing through. But I think 6 months into it, right? We got a call from management and said, Isaac, this is not working. And then as we discussed, right, they actually told me that, oh, this HOD, and we were telling about how this HOD is very difficult. So, and we were not spending so much time with them. Basically, we told all the HOD, you must do this. And then when they called us, when we had a sit down with them, they actually told us that this HOD is the nephew of the founder. So remember I was talking about some people, you need to make them happy. So, you know, when we realized that, then we asked them, how come you didn't tell us this earlier? Then basically it's an SME. And they said basically for them, they didn't feel comfortable or find it a bit embarrassing to say that. So once we understood that, then we had to change the way we do things. My team actually spent a bit more time with him, goes down to his operations side a bit more, have conversation, have dialogues. And now it kind of helped a little bit to be able to get the buy-in. So remember, there are some people you just need to make happy. Yeah, right. And this is the reality of stakeholder management. All right. Okay. Any other questions? I was told we only have an hour, so it's already now dot of an hour. So if there's no questions, if there's any question, please indicate in the chat box, right? Yeah, or ask me because I'm done with the content. Okay. So hopefully the person who asked about overcome self-doubt, I hope this framework has given you some idea, right? Especially at HR. Now, one of the things is if you're a HR leader, you must communicate and spend time with the HODs, which means make it in Malaysian culture, have more coffee with them, sit down and have casual talk. Don't make everything formal. That's one. Secondly, make sure that when you are talking to the HODs, don't always talk about work. Focus more on them, right? Like, hey, what's your issue? What's the challenge? How can I help you? So you need to recognize human beings, we are always interested in ourselves. So if you are really talking to a HOD, make sure that they feel that you want to help them, not about them following your change. That is something very, very important. Okay. What is the major changes your company faced during pandemic? Okay, so for us, basically transitioning from physical classroom workshop to virtual, right? So that was probably the major change. Now, my team is very nimble. So we have a small team of 5 of us. So for us, because we have open and transparent communication, it's a lot easy for us to resolve a lot of things, as well as we are very mindful of operation costs. So one of the things for me as a consulting group is we are mindful of operation costs. So we don't invest in a big office. So we all work from home. So there's a lot of trust. That's one. But we work by deadlines and objectives, right? Deadline objectives. So we don't work by work hours. Okay. In terms of policies and procedures or any changes, so this is something that you need to get the senior leadership to agree on. What's the policy? So let me share with you. One of the clients I'm working with on change management, they allow people working from home, but the staff tell me, but we still have to come back to office to get signature. So I asked them, why don't you use Adobe signature, right? So Adobe is a software that allows you to do online signature. So they went back and they actually talked about it and then they implement. So policies and procedures, no issue. Okay, when you want to talk about policy and procedure, refer to this. Go and look at this. Once again, Rasika, drop me an email. I'll send you this Hopberg and Litwin model. It shows you how the entire organization is connected and how you, if you're going to put a policy, what are the thought through process you need to think through when you want to apply the different policies. For example, when we talk about working from home, do you give them allowances for their broadband? You cannot just say work from home and do whatever you want. That's one. Secondly, do you give empowerment to the leaders? So, for example, when I was in Singapore, we were in a remote working environment. So I will need to go to the office at 8 a.m. in the morning if my team leader calls for a team meeting. But if my team leaders don't call for a team meeting, I can go at any time I want. So you must have policies for that, right? For example, with work from home, a lot of companies are managing by how many hours you're on the laptop. I would say one of the performance management, one of the policies you need to revise is the performance management. Learn to manage by objectives and by tasks. Don't manage by hours, right? That is very, very difficult. So that is what I can say about policy and procedure when it comes to COVID and the pandemic. All right. I hope that addresses that. Let me look any question I have not addressed. Okay. Let me just quickly pull back this. Yeah. Okay, another 1 minute for any question. If not, I'm going to hand it back to Marlisa because we slightly overran, right? Let me just, okay. Yeah, let me see what other questions I've not answered. Okay, so just buying in is difficult, let alone participate. Even though without participation from management, change become much more difficult to succeed. Now, you must get management participation. Without that, everything will fail, right? Because you can be working so much thing and management just step in and say, no, cannot. So how do you get management buy-in? So sometimes you need to arrange for like walk through, right? Let management do. You need to arrange for like a tea session with the management so people can give feedback, right? So you must get management participation. Now, how you do that, you can do a number of ways. Once again, Malaysian culture is very hierarchical. So sometimes you have to carry, uncut the bosses a bit more, right? You need to be able to make them feel, oh, you know what? The people really wants to hear from you, they really value your wisdom. And then you organize a session, let them talk. So the more the management talk, the better it is. So let me share with you. So yesterday I was telling you I was running a workshop on performance management. And prior to that, when I was with the HR director, they were very clear that the people are very clear with SMART goal setting. They are very clear. Because why? Isaac, in our company, we already have e-learning system. We have all the SMART goal module. So I said, fine. So when we did the session, and because the way we run training is more facilitation, people started sharing. And the HR director was in the session. The HR director suddenly realized, hey, you know what, Isaac, I think our people need it. Now, I didn't push for it, but because they hear it, they became more open to it. What's my point? My point is you need to find a way to get management involved and to get management to interact with the people then the change becomes easier, right? So you cannot do it, you cannot separate it, you must have. How to overcome self-doubt? So I think some of the things we do this one. Secondly, find a mentor. So I know FutureLab is a great place, right? You need to find a mentor, somebody to guide you, right? That is going to minimize the failures. Okay, what's the most important element? Change. So I just talk about internal culture, responding to change performance employees. Now, you do need to recognize employees are always stressed. So how to work with that? Okay. Resistance to change is often characterized by following behaviors and to be able to overcome all of this. What steps will be taken to make change in corporate culture from top to bottom? Okay, so Rahmat, this the 8-step culture change is a really good approach to help minimize a lot of these things. Now, in change, as the change team, right, you want to focus on minimally 60% buy-in. Right, minimally 16% buy-in. You don't need 100%. Because why? There are people, we are looking for early adopters, that's one. Secondly, human culture is, if 60% majority are going in, the rest will just say, I will follow, right? I will follow you. So make sure you get 60% buy-in, then the change will be successful, right? That's one. Secondly, when we say about behavior such denial, stress, cynicism, silence, and living. So once again, leadership alignment. A lot of the times we don't address this issue, right? So you must train your leaders to manage this. Cannot just think of HR. So get the leadership involved, get the change team involved. Alignment is critical, right? Once again, what I shared in terms of the communication, so basically, okay, so perhaps after this, I will send a slide deck to Melissa. You all can have it. Apply what I've just shared with you all, and it's going to address a lot of this issue. Now, will it be 100% successful? It won't be 100%, but it will give you a very high level of success. That's one. Secondly, remember, when it comes to change, it's more about the emotion than logic. When it comes to change, it's about emotion than logic. So make sure you focus on addressing people's fear, people's concern, suggestion box, having equipping the managers with listening skills, equipping your manager with empathy skills to listen, and not just say, you must change, you must change, you must change. Sometimes it's asking why is it difficult? Now, one of the things that we faced this before is some people just want a 9-to-5 job. So sometimes we actually work with the leadership in terms of, you know what, if this person just want a 9-to-5 job, maybe we do in terms of moving across departments or to a different function or get different job role. So we still get them to do their job, but at the same time, keep it 9-to-5. So look at ways to work with your people rather than to just push change down. Hopefully that answers that, right? All right. Anything else? Vanessa, if there's nothing else, it's back to you.
Thank you, Isaac.